My name is Jack, and I'm 58 years old. I've been married to my wife, Lisa, for 30 years. She's 54, and for most of our marriage, I thought we had the kind of relationship people envy, built on trust, laughter, and a shared life that spanned decades. We raised 2 kids together, watched them grow into adults, and supported each other through every storm life threw our way. Or so I thought. It was about 6 months ago that the first crack appeared, though I didn't recognize it at the time. Lisa had started acting differently, snapping at me over small things, being evasive about her whereabouts, and spending more time than usual on her phone. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off as stress from work or menopause, always with a tone that made me feel like I was crazy for even questioning her. "Don't be paranoid, Jack. Not everything is about you," she'd say, rolling her eyes. I wanted to believe her. We had been through so much together. Buying our first house, surviving financial struggles, and even dealing with my estranged father's death, which brought my half-brother, Eric, into our lives. Eric was 10 years younger than me and had only come into my life when I was in my 20s. Despite the awkwardness, we'd grown close over the years, or at least I thought we had. It never occurred to me that the 2 most important people in my life could betray me in such a cruel way. But the signs kept piling up, and I was too blind, or maybe too trusting, to put the pieces together. Looking back, I wish I'd seen it sooner. Maybe then, I wouldn't have let my anger consume me the way it eventually did. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when everything unraveled. I had come home early from work, hoping to surprise Lisa with her favorite takeout and maybe lighten her mood. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was eerily quiet when I walked in. I called out for her, but there was no response. As I moved toward the kitchen, I saw her phone on the counter. The screen lit up with a text notification as I approached. I wasn't the type to snoop, but something about the message caught my eye. "I can't stop thinking about last night. When can we meet again?" My heart stopped. The sender's name read E. At first, I thought it might be one of her friends, but then it clicked. Eric. A wave of nausea hit me, and my hands started shaking as I picked up the phone. It wasn't locked, which only made it easier for me to open the messages. What I saw gutted me. There were weeks, no, months of messages. Flirty exchanges, inside jokes, and explicit details of meetups while I was at work or running errands. My half-brother, the man I had welcomed into my life with open arms, and my wife, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had been sneaking around behind my back. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. My vision blurred, and I had to steady myself on the counter to keep from collapsing. I scrolled through the texts in disbelief, each one another punch to the gut. The most recent message confirmed what I feared. They had been at a hotel the night before while I was out helping our daughter with some last-minute moving boxes. Couldn't breathe. My world, the life I thought was solid and secure, was crumbling in front of me. And the worst part? I still didn't know how deep this betrayal went or how long it had been happening. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the messages, replaying every interaction with Lisa and Eric in my head, trying to piece together the moments I had missed. The laughter they shared at family barbecues, the late-night work calls Lisa would take, Eric's sudden offers to help with things around the house. It all made sense now. Every red flag I had ignored was waving in my face, mocking me for being so blind. I didn't wait to calm down. Couldn't. The rage was bubbling over, and I needed answers. I stormed upstairs, where I found Lisa in the bedroom, folding laundry like nothing had happened. She barely glanced at me as I walked in. "Jack, can you put the groceries away? Who the hell is E?" I snapped, throwing her phone onto the bed. Her face paled as the phone bounced next to her. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her hands freezing mid-fold. "Don't play dumb, Lisa. I saw the messages. You've been sneaking around with Eric. How long has this been going on?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then the lies started. "It's not what you think, Jack. He's been going through a rough time and I've been helping him. You're twisting this into something it's not." Helping him? I laughed bitterly. By meeting him at hotels and telling him you can't wait to see him again? Don't insult my intelligence, Lisa. Her face hardened. The nervous act melted away, replaced by a cold defiance I hadn't seen before. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, we've been seeing each other. But can you blame me? You've been so distant, so wrapped up in your own world, Jack. I needed someone who made me feel alive again. I felt like I had been slapped. You're blaming me for this? 30 years. Lisa, 30 years of marriage, and this is how you repay me? With my own brother. Half-brother? She corrected with an icy smirk, as if that made it any better. I saw red. Do you hear yourself right now? The lies, the excuses, what happened to the woman I married? Do you even care what this has done to me, to us? She crossed her arms and shrugged. Maybe if you'd paid more attention, we wouldn't be here. You want someone to blame? Look in the mirror. I couldn't believe the person standing in front of me was the same woman I had shared my life with. Her indifference cut deeper than any words ever could. I knew then that whatever we had once shared was gone. It wasn't just the affair. It was the utter lack of remorse, the way she dismissed my pain like it was nothing. Before I could say another word, she stormed past me, slamming the door on her way out. The house felt emptier than ever, even with her still inside. Lisa locked herself in the guest room that night, leaving me to stew in the bedroom we had shared for 3 decades. Couldn't sleep. My mind replayed her words over and over. Can you blame me? And that smug correction. Half-brother. At some point, I grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the kitchen and started drinking. The memories came flooding in. Our wedding day, the birth of our kids, the time she held my hand when I lost my job and promised we'd get through it together. Every moment felt like a lie now, tainted by her betrayal. But it wasn't just her. Eric's face kept appearing in my mind, too, his laugh, his easy charm. I had been the one to build a bridge between him and our family after years of estrangement with our father. I was the one who introduced him to Lisa, invited him to holidays, and treated him like a brother in every sense of the word. And this was how he repaid me? By worming his way into my wife's bed? The next day I called Eric. I wasn't sure what I expected, a denial, maybe, or some kind of groveling apology. Instead, he answered casually, like he had no idea what I knew. Hey Jack, what's up? His cheerful tone was like gasoline on a fire. Don't you hey Jack me? I growled. I know what's been going on between you and Lisa. You're a goddamn snake, Eric. There was a long pause before he finally replied. Look man, I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did, okay? We didn't plan it. Didn't plan it? I exploded. You've been sneaking around with my wife for months, and you expect me to believe this was some kind of accident? You're my brother. How could you do this to me? Half-brother, he corrected. I nearly threw my phone against the wall. Don't you dare pull that crap. You were supposed to be family. He sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. Look, Jack, I get that you're upset, but maybe this is for the best. Clearly, things weren't great between you two, or this wouldn't have happened. Lisa deserves to be happy, and so do I. It took everything in me not to drive to his place and knock him out. Happy? You think I care about your happiness? I trusted you, Eric. Both of you. You've destroyed my life. I'm sorry you feel that way, he said, his voice infuriatingly calm. But maybe it's time for everyone to move on. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. My hands were trembling, and my heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice. Eric's casual dismissal was almost worse than Lisa's indifference. It was like I didn't matter to either of them, like I was just an obstacle in their way. The house was too quiet when I went back inside. Every picture on the walls, every piece of furniture, felt like a reminder of what I had lost. And then, as I looked around, an idea began to form in my mind. A dark, impulsive thought that I couldn't shake. If they didn't care about what they had done, why should I care about what I left behind? The idea consumed me. At first, I dismissed it as drunken anger, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like the only way to purge the pain and betrayal that had taken over my life. That house, the life Lisa and I built together, it was tainted now. A prison of memories I couldn't bear to live with anymore. Lisa had gone out early that Saturday, muttering something about meeting a friend. I didn't ask questions. I was past caring. As soon as her car left the driveway, I went into action. I started with our bedroom, gathering everything that belonged to her. Clothes, shoes, jewelry. It all went into a pile in the center of the room. Then I moved on to her emergency savings. A stash of cash she kept hidden in a lockbox in the closet. She had always been proud of her little nest egg, something she thought I didn't know about. I took it all, adding the bills to the growing heap on the floor. Next came the sentimental items. Photo albums, love letters from when we were dating, anniversary cards she had saved. I piled them on top. Each piece felt like another stab to the heart. But I kept going, fueled by a mix of rage and numbness. When I was done, I grabbed a can of lighter fluid from the garage. I doused the pile, making sure every corner was soaked. I stood there for a moment, holding the match, my hand trembling. A small part of me hesitated. Could I really do this? Burn down 30 years of my life? But then I thought of the texts, of Eric's smug voice telling me to move on, and the hesitation vanished. The match ignited with a satisfying crackle, and I dropped it onto the pile. The flames caught instantly, roaring to life and consuming everything in their path. The heat was intense, but I didn't move. I watched as 30 years of love, betrayal, and heartbreak turned to ash. The fire spread quickly. It licked at the walls, the curtains, the bed. I hadn't planned on burning down the entire house, but once the flames took hold, there was no stopping them. I stepped outside and stood in the driveway, watching as the place that had once been my home went up in smoke. Neighbors started to gather, their voices a distant hum in the background. Someone must have called the fire department because I could hear the sirens in the distance. But I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt free. Lisa arrived just as the fire trucks pulled up. She jumped out of her car, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Jack, what the hell did you do?" I turned to her, calm in a way that seemed to unnerve her. "I burned it all, Lisa. Everything. Just like you and Eric burned our marriage to the ground." Her face turned red, and for the first time, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. "You're insane. You've ruined everything." I smiled bitterly.
No, Lisa.
"You did that." The fire was extinguished within hours, but the damage was done. The house was a charred skeleton of its former self, and with it, every trace of the life I had built with Lisa was gone. The fire chief asked me what happened, and I told him I had been burning some things in the fireplace when it got out of control. He gave me a skeptical look but didn't press further. Lisa, however, wasn't so restrained. "You're going to jail for this?" she screamed as I sat on the curb, staring at the ruins. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You destroyed my savings, my things, your savings." I cut her off, finally looking at her. "Funny. I thought it was our house, Lisa. But then again, you've been sharing plenty of things behind my back, haven't you?" She recoiled, her face contorting with fury. "You're pathetic, Jack. This little stunt just proves why I needed more than you could offer." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that seemed to rattle her. "Needed more? Sure, Lisa. Let's go with that. I hope Eric's worth it, because you've got nothing left here." Before she could respond, a police officer approached us. He asked me to step aside to talk. I expected to be arrested on the spot, but instead, he asked a few questions about the fire and wrote down my answers. Lisa, of course, chimed in, screaming about how I had deliberately torched the house. "You do realize filing a false report is a crime, right?" the officer said to her sharply. "If we find no evidence of arson, you could face consequences for wasting our time." That shut her up, for now. When the officer left, Lisa turned to me, her expression venomous. "You're going to regret this, Jack. I'll make sure you lose everything." I stared at her, feeling nothing but contempt. "You already took everything from me, Lisa. There's nothing left to lose." She stormed off, muttering under her breath about lawyers and restraining orders. I didn't care. Let her throw whatever she wanted at me. The house, the marriage, the years I had given her, it was all ash now. She couldn't hurt me any more than she already had. But I wasn't naive. I knew the legal fallout was coming, and part of me welcomed it. At least it would be a distraction from the emptiness that had settled in my chest like a stone. That night, I slept in my car, parked a few blocks away. The smoke smell clung to my clothes, and my head throbbed from the weight of everything that had happened. But for the first time in months, my mind was quiet. No more questions, no more doubts, just silence. And that silence felt like the beginning of something new. The next week was a blur of legal chaos. Lisa wasted no time filing for divorce and reporting the fire to the insurance company. She was adamant that I had intentionally burned the house down, and I knew she was going to bleed me dry in court. Her threats of revenge weren't empty, but neither was my resolve. A few days after the fire, I got a call from a lawyer Lisa had hired. He was polite but firm, telling me Lisa planned to pursue significant compensation for the damages, claiming emotional distress and loss of property. I nearly laughed out loud. "She's claiming emotional distress?" I said. "That's rich coming from a woman who's been cheating on me with my half-brother." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "We'll be focusing on the fire," the lawyer said stiffly before ending the call. The next day, the police came back for a formal interview. They questioned me extensively, but I stuck to my story. The fire started accidentally while I was burning some personal items in the fireplace. Lisa's accusations of arson came up, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove intent. The fire department's investigation was inconclusive. They couldn't determine if it was deliberate or an accident. For now, the law was on my side. But Lisa wasn't done. She turned to the court of public opinion, airing our dirty laundry to anyone who would listen. Friends, family, even the neighbors, everyone heard her version of the story. According to Lisa, I was an unstable, jealous husband who had lost control. She painted herself as the victim, conveniently leaving out the part where she had been sleeping with Eric for months. Speaking of Eric, he was nowhere to be found. The coward went radio silent after our confrontation. I heard through the grapevine that he had left town, probably to avoid the fallout. Good riddance. His absence didn't make Lisa look any better, though. People started putting the pieces together, and soon, her story wasn't holding up under scrutiny. One by one, mutual friends reached out to me. Some offered support while others just wanted to know the full story. I didn't hold back. I told them everything. How I had found out about the affair, how Lisa had shown no remorse, how she had tried to gaslight me into thinking it was my fault. The truth spread quickly, and soon Lisa found herself on the defensive. That didn't stop her from trying to punish me, though. She filed an emergency motion to freeze our joint accounts, claiming I was a flight risk. She even tried to take my car, saying I was irresponsible and couldn't be trusted. But I was ready for her. I had already moved most of my savings into a separate account the day after I found out about the affair. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get by. The divorce proceedings were shaping up to be a war, and I was gearing up for battle. If Lisa thought she could destroy me, she was in for a rude awakening. Amid the legal chaos, the fallout within my family was even harder to navigate. The affair had driven a wedge between people who had been constants in my life for decades. My kids, Josh, 28, and Emily, 25, were the first to confront me about the fire. They heard about it from Lisa, who framed the entire thing as me losing my mind over some petty argument. Emily called me the day after the fire, her voice a mix of anger and confusion. "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom said you burned down the house. Is that true?" I took a deep breath, knowing this conversation wasn't going to be easy. "Yes, Emily, it's true, but you don't have the full story." "Then tell me," she snapped, "because right now it sounds like you've lost it." So, I told her everything. The affair, the texts, how I discovered the betrayal. I didn't sugarcoat it, but I also didn't shy away from taking responsibility for my actions. By the time I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Eric? Uncle Eric?" she finally said, her voice trembling. How could he? "I don't know, Em," I said softly. "I wish I did." Josh, on the other hand, had a different reaction when I told him. I always thought something was off with those two, he muttered. The way they acted around each other at family gatherings. It was too familiar, you know? No, I didn't know, I said bitterly. I guess I should have paid more attention. Josh didn't defend Lisa, but he wasn't exactly thrilled with me either. I get that you're angry, Dad, but burning the house down? That's not just about you. That's about all of us. There were memories in that house. Good ones. His words stung because they were true. In my rage, I hadn't thought about how my actions would affect my kids. I apologized, but I could tell it wasn't enough to repair the damage. Not yet, anyway. Then there was my extended family. News of the affair spread quickly, and everyone had an opinion. Some were on my side, disgusted by Lisa and Eric's betrayal. Others thought I had gone too far with the fire, calling me reckless and immature. My mother, who had never been particularly close to Lisa, surprised me with her bluntness. I never liked that woman, she said over the phone. She always had a sneaky look about her. But Eric, that's a new low even for him. You don't owe them anything, Jack. Hearing her say that was oddly comforting, even if it didn't erase the pain. Lisa, meanwhile, was scrambling to salvage her reputation. She tried to spin the narrative with anyone who would listen, claiming I was the unfaithful one, that I had driven her to find comfort elsewhere. But the more she lied, the more people started to see through her. Even some of her closest friends began distancing themselves. Eric was still MIA, and I had no intention of reaching out to him. As far as I was concerned, he was dead to me. But his absence only fueled the rumors, and eventually, his name became synonymous with betrayal in our social circles. The family I had once cherished was fractured, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. But for now, I was focused on surviving the wreckage Lisa and Eric had left behind, and figuring out what came next. Weeks turned into months, and the dust from the fire, both literal and metaphorical, began to settle. The divorce proceedings dragged on, with Lisa doing everything she could to squeeze as much as possible from me. She claimed I was a danger to myself and others, pointing to the fire as evidence. My lawyer argued that the fire was accidental, and since the investigation had been inconclusive, Lisa's claims didn't hold much weight. Still, her relentless attempts to paint me as unstable were exhausting. One afternoon, I got an unexpected email. It was from Eric. My first reaction was to delete it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. The subject line read, "An apology, for what it's worth." The email was long and rambling, filled with excuses about how he hadn't meant to hurt me, how he and Lisa just happened, and how he regretted the pain he'd caused. But what struck me most was the part where he admitted Lisa had initiated the affair. "She came to me first," he wrote. "I was lonely, and she knew exactly how to manipulate that. I'm not saying I'm innocent. I'm not. But I think you should know she wasn't the victim she's trying to make herself out to be." I sat there, staring at the screen, unsure of what to feel. His words didn't absolve him of his betrayal, but they confirmed what I had suspected all along. Lisa wasn't just indifferent to my pain. She had orchestrated it. She had chosen to betray me, to destroy our marriage, and to play the victim when it all fell apart. Fueled by this new clarity, I decided it was time to stop playing defense in the divorce. I worked with my lawyer to compile everything I had: Eric's email, screenshots of the texts, even statements from a few mutual friends who were willing to testify about Lisa's lies. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming some sense of justice. The turning point came during one of the court hearings. Lisa's lawyer was arguing for a significant portion of my retirement savings, claiming Lisa deserved compensation for the emotional hardship I had caused. My lawyer, cool and composed, presented the evidence of her affair and Eric's email, which directly contradicted her claims. Lisa's face turned ashen as the judge read the email aloud. For the first time, she didn't have a snarky comment or a smug look. She just sat there, her perfect narrative crumbling around her. The judge ruled in my favor, significantly reducing what I owed her and rejecting her claims of emotional hardship. It wasn't a total victory. I still had to give up a portion of my savings and sell what was left of the house to cover legal fees, but it felt like a step toward reclaiming my dignity. Lisa's lies couldn't shield her anymore, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had won a small but meaningful battle. After the divorce was finalized, I decided to leave the town that had become a constant reminder of my pain. I moved to a smaller city a few hours away, found a modest apartment and started fresh. It wasn't easy rebuilding my life at 58, but it was liberating to be free of the toxic mess Lisa and Eric had left behind. My relationship with my kids slowly improved. Emily came to visit me not long after the divorce, and we had a long, heartfelt conversation about everything that had happened. She admitted she had struggled to reconcile the father she knew with the man who had burned the house down, but over time, she came to understand the depth of my pain. Josh was more reserved, but he eventually reached out too. "I can't say I agree with everything you did," he said during one of our phone calls, "but I get it, and I respect you for standing up for yourself." As for Lisa, I haven't spoken to her since the divorce was finalized. From what I've heard, she's still in town, struggling to maintain the social circle she once prided herself on. Eric, last I heard, he moved out of state, and no one in the family keeps in touch with him. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. Not the fire, not the divorce, not cutting them out of my life. Sometimes you have to let things burn to the ground to make room for something new. If there's one piece of advice I'd give to anyone in a similar situation, it's this. Trust your gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it. And when the people you love betray you, don't let their actions define you. You're worth more than the lies they tell. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm truly free. And that, I've learned, is worth more than anything I lost. Thank you for staying with me. This crazy journey is finally over and I'm ready for what's next. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more interesting stories. And leave a comment with what you would do in this situation. See you in the next videos.